I just did a new round of hiring to get a new bunch of writers for specific topics for a new website. And this time I got fooled big time. We always check that everything the writers write is 100% original. Of course, it's alright to cite sources and to be inspired by other bloggers and articles on the web, but you cannot copy and paste stuff from other articles, right? So we always check it with these plagiarism checkers, and this time it totally stood the test and it seemed like everything was just fine. But then when I digged into the details in the article, something just ticked me off. It was just this one part of the article that was a little weird, and I didn't really get why the writer would include this information in the article. So I digged a little bit into it, and I took little pieces of the sentences and googled them to see if they would appear elsewhere on the web. And I managed to find an article that was almost exactly the same. You know, they took bits and pieces and reworded different words here and there in each sentence just to make sure that it would pass all the plagiarism checkers. So this was definitely done on purpose because, I mean, it was almost like art. It was the same article, but it did pass through all the plagiarism checkers. So I'm pretty sure this guy knew exactly what he was doing. And when I confronted him about it, or I should say my editor confronted him, he said, well, it checked all the plagiarism checkers, so it's original content, all right. But the thing is that the article that was so close to the article he delivered in to us was not cited as a source, even though he cited other sources. So then I knew, okay, this dude is definitely trying to trick us, and I got a little mad, and of course I fired him right on the spot. Because I mean, it's perfectly fine to find bits and pieces and information and data and so on elsewhere on the web. We have to do that, of course, because the web is where we do all the research for the articles, right? But I mean, if you are really close to another article and you're not citing it as a source, you're definitely doing it on purpose. And this was just way too close. It was almost like bits and pieces of the sentences was copied in and just changed. They just changed the word here and there just to pass these plagiarism checks. So I must say, they almost got me, because it said something like 97% original, which is normally totally fine. So the only way I found out about this was because I found this little sentence that I thought was a little weird. He did some swearing and there was just some odd sentences. So he got a little lazy, I suppose. So I took these bits and pieces of the sentences, as I said, copied and pasted them into Google, and quickly I was able to find this other article. So whenever a writer will try to trick you because they are lazy and they don't want to write and spend time doing real proper research, what they will typically do is, when you send them this first test article, they will do perfectly fine, because these are typically very intelligent persons, you know. So they'll do a perfect test article, and then after a while they'll start slipping more and more. So that's also why we have a special process for hiring new writers for our site. So first we give them one test article. And there I will check everything. I mean, I'll really dig into it and see if it's 100% original. And of course I want to check that spelling is alright, sentence structures is alright, to make sure that they are actually a good writer. So it's all down to research and whether the content inside the article is alright and good, because that's the hard part, to figure out if they are getting that right without doing the research yourself, of course. So we give them one test article first, and then if they pass that test, then we give them 3 additional articles, because now they might start getting a little lazy because they think they're getting in and everything is cool, and now you'll watch just as closely to see if everything checks out alright. And if they pass that test as well, then we onboard them for a test month, where we will eventually totally pick each article apart and see if all the research is alright, all the facts are alright, every claim they make seem to hold true, and so on. Just really pay close attention, because, you know, these scammers that are all over the web, you know, trying to just send you plagiarism work or just copy and paste bits and pieces, they will always start off as a really good writer, and then they'll slip more and more and more. So don't just let anybody in because they do one good test article, alright? So here are a couple of things that I typically look for when we're hiring new writers, in order to figure out if we're dealing with a scammer or a really good writer. So first, I take a look at the email they are contacting me with, and the email they're using for payment on PayPal. If that is something like Jenny 13 or Amanda 78 or whatever, you know, something that looks generic, it probably is. Because the thing is that these scammers typically work at scale, and typically it's systemized, and somebody's just throwing out 100 articles or 100 profiles all over Upwork and ProBlogger and whatever. So they'll mass produce a whole deal of emails that they will just shuffle around. So look for something that looks mass produced, and also check that the email they use for PayPal, if that's what you're using when they are paying you or whatever, typically you will have an email assigned to that payment system. Check out that this is the same email that they used when they contacted you, because this was actually the case in the specific case that I just told you about. This guy had another email for payment, and that is typically something you need to look out for, because it might be that he's just created like 100 profiles all over the web and 100 emails, and then he's collecting all this into one PayPal account. So I confronted him about it and just asked him, and he said, it's my wife's email, and I thought, that might be right, so I went with it, but it turned out he was a scammer. So there's something else to look for. Of course, it's not a definite fact that somebody's a scammer just because they're using a couple of different emails for payments and communication, but it's something to look for. And then you definitely need to copy and paste bits and pieces from the article directly into Google for these first articles when you're checking if everything is original content. I mean, don't rely 100% on the plagiarism checkers. There are many different ones. We use the Grammarly ones, the paid version, and I mean, it's alright, it catches a lot, but many times it will not catch everything. Like in the case I mentioned in the beginning of this video, I totally got scammed from a rip-off article that checked perfectly fine with the plagiarism checkers. So take bits and pieces of the sentences here and there, and especially those that looks a little weird, and if there's something that's not exactly on point and something that sounds like it's taken out of context from the rest of the content around it. Take this little sentence, maybe 6, 7, 8 words, copy paste it into Google, and just see if it appears elsewhere on the web. Do this 10 or 15 times throughout this article, for the first article and also for the following up articles, and during the first month do this on a consistent basis until you're absolutely sure that this writer is writing original content. And then you also need to check for feedback on the platform where you found this writer. So let's say you're hiring over Upwork. They have a system in place for this. You can see the history they have with clients, if they did good work and if people liked what they did, and so on. So you have to be a little careful with new profiles, because if they are new and there's no ratings or anything, reviews for them yet, you don't know if this is a 100% scam, because typically they will work with new profiles. Because as soon as they are exposed, the profile is gone and they'll just create a new bunch of profiles out there. And this can be a little harder on other platforms where you don't have this feedback system in place. So you'll just have to, Google their name, see if you can find them, see if you can find a real LinkedIn profile behind this name, and dig a little bit into what they told you in the application. You can ask them specific questions like, what are your previous work experience? And then you'll probably be able to go into LinkedIn and see if you can actually find this person and just verify that you're dealing with a real person. That's a good way to find out whether it's a scammer or it's a real person. So what did I do when I found out that this dude scammed me? Well, in the beginning, when I was just starting out hiring external writers and freelancers to help me, when I experienced something like this, I would get really mad and get really tense and really shoot them an email, see if I could get my $15 bag or whatever. But today I'm not spending any time on this, because, you know, they will take your money, they will run. That's what a scammer do, and you will probably not be able to get any of this money back anyway. So I basically just told my editor to move on and not focus on this, because it's just bad energy. It'll just ruin your day if you focus too much on this negative stuff. Because scammers are out there, of course they are. It's a digital world and everybody can hide behind a screen and a pseudonym. It's easy to do that. So it's just as quickly as possible I moved on, put it behind me, and focus on the new writers. Also because every time we do a round of hiring, we'll typically get around 100 applicants or maybe more, and then we'll narrow it down through the first article, the next set of 3 test articles, to maybe a handful, maybe only 2 writers. So of course in every batch of 100 applicants there will be scammers and there will be people trying to trick you. So the trick is to get smarter than them and really pick apart all the work they do. And just be aware that this is a fact. Every time you're hiring, there'll be somebody in the pool that will try to trick you. So that's how it is. Don't get mad about it. Just move on and put the bad energy behind you, alright? And normally when we work with our writers, we try to be as nice to work with as possible because of course we want the writers to stick with us for a long time. And one way I do this is to always pay the writers immediately when they deliver in the work. But there's an exception here. I don't do this when I'm testing writers. Just because if I figure out that they send me an article that's not original and it's just not good work, they copy paste it or whatever, I don't want to pay them up front before I check the articles. So I make this clear when I'm testing the writers that during the test articles I read the articles first and then I release the payments into their accounts. So you can do that just to make sure that you're not wasting money away on scammers. So as I told you, I've been fooled many times before, of course, because I've hired hundreds and hundreds of writers. So other ways I've been fooled is that people tell me they are from the States or the UK and then they're from somewhere else. And there's some way you can check this, especially on Upwork. You can check the timestamp on their profile and see if that matches the time zone they should be in. And also you can check the response time, because you'll have an idea of when they should be awake, but this is a little more tricky of course, because some of us are night owls. I work at night, that's where I do my best work, so it's definitely not a bulletproof strategy, but it's something to look for, and at least look for the response time. Also because if a writer is not getting back to you within 2 or 3 days, chances are that they might not have their own laptop, maybe they're going to a library to write, or maybe they're going elsewhere, or maybe they're just working most of the day, and if it takes a couple of days every time they're getting back to you, you will probably not enjoy working with this person over a long period of time. And then I've also been fooled by people who say there's this and that and then they're not. You know, they tell me they have a ton of experience or whatever, or they're living here or whatever. It can also be due to the geographical location. But if they tell me a lot of really cool stuff that they think I want to hear, then I also want to check up on that, because there's a lot of fake personas. So a way you can check this, and also a way to check if they are actually in the location they claim to be, and you know, if they are in fact native English speakers, you can set up a Skype call with them just to see face to face that they are actually who they say they are, because that would easily scare away scammers. I mean, they will never respond to a request like that. And I like to do that for several reasons. First, I want to check their accent. I want to know that they have perfect English, because if they told me they're native English speakers, they're from the UK or the US or whatever, but now for some reason they're living here or there, I will quickly be able to, and you will too, be able to hear in their voice if English is their first spoken language. So that's the first thing I want to check when I do a Skype call or a Zoom call or whatever with new writers. And the second reason I want to get them on a video call early on is to check that they actually know what they're talking about. Because I typically try to hire writers who know something about the topic they're writing on. So let's say I'm hiring somebody who knows everything about beekeeping, or they've been playing football for ages or whatever. I just want to ask some basic questions, because even though I'm not an expert myself, it's typically pretty easy to figure out if they know what they are talking about. I mean, are they a little hesitant in their voice when they want to answer exactly where they went to college and they learned to play football, or how they came about all this knowledge about beekeeping or whatever. So just ask them and dig deeper into it and see if it comes natural and they actually know what they're talking about. And also just to see if you have good chemistry with the person. I mean, if you're going to work with this writer over a long period of time, which is what you should aim for, it's just important that you have good communication going, because you are going to communicate a lot with this person, and it's just important to figure out if you have good communication or if you are sort of misunderstanding each other for some cultural reasons or whatever. And if you are hiring people from Asia, many times they'll not be comfortable going on a camera. So, I mean, you can definitely work with them anyway. Personally, I just prefer to have people on a camera for a little call. And also, I mean, if they're not comfortable doing that, I mean, there's tons and tons of people in Asia who will do that, but there's definitely more people who will not like to do that, because, you know, it's just a cultural thing. They might be a little intimidated from it. But I typically work with people who are comfortable being on camera, because that just means to me that they are closer to my culture at least, and it's just easier for me to talk to somebody who can feel relaxed in front of a camera, because I want writers on my team that I can easily communicate with and who don't see me like this boss figure that you have to please or whatever and just say yes to everything. I want to work with people who can say no to me and who can say, no, this is not correct. You want the title to be like this because this is a more precise way of saying it, and who can actually correct me when I'm wrong. That's a really good writer to me. So I hope you never get fooled like this, and give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you like what I'm doing here. I'll see you guys next time. And a little quick update for those of you who are interested in our travels. We are at Bornholm. It's as far east as you can go in Denmark, just below Sweden and close to Poland and Germany. And we're taking the ferry to Germany in around 4 or 5 days. And this is an amazing view up here. And what we have here is an artificial lake created in the 70s because people wanted to get these stones and rocks here for building houses and stuff. So they blew all this out, and eventually it all got filled up with water, and it looks amazing. So soon we're entering Germany, and the plan right now is to continue down into Germany and follow the heat and the sun down there as we enter the fall season. So see you guys.